just free love and what have you. You could get anything, and I think that perhaps stayed, unseen, throughout the 70s. But I think when the AIDS crisis happened and the very sort of right-wing kind of movements started kicking in with Thatcher, etc., I think that had a huge sort of turn that you had to return to a sort of normality of your mainstream sort of straight couple and getting married and getting kids, and so it changed the focus. Although you had at one extreme the very out there gay scene, obviously profiled by New York and London in many respects, I somehow don't think that translated back to Denmark in quite the same way. I actually think that something happened which has meant that Denmark is today, slightly more conservative than, say, London and even Berlin and other places, and even Spain today. You would argue that have better equal rights for gay couples that want to get married and adopt than compared to Denmark. And I think there hasn't been in Denmark the sort of strong, high-profile either gay politicians, etc., until recently. And I think that's had an effect on that. Though Denmark is a very free and tolerant society, it's a little bit like the French, that what goes on behind closed doors is absolutely fine, as long as it's not too out there in the public. Now, I think a lot of my Danish friends will be horrified to hear that I'm saying that, but I often feel that that is the case, that as long as you're not too challenging, then you're fine. And I think that goes for any culture, any place that you go to, but it is remarkably strange that that should be the case for Denmark when it was so sort of progressive back in the 60s and 70s. And I think though London and Britain has obviously had its huge complications, through the 70s and 80s in gay liberation and what have you, I actually think at this point it is progressing faster than most other places, partly because there's a huge amount to catch up with. I remember when I first came to London, I often felt that London was perhaps 30-40 years behind the rest of Europe in terms of social policies, etc., and just general providing the same kind of public service that I would sort of at the time be getting coming from Denmark. And I think that was what a lot of my friends who decided to also come to London decided that they couldn't have, and just had to give it up because it felt as if, and this is my theory, that Britain kind of stagnated after the 60s and therefore did not have the same sort of social security policies built in, from that point onwards. And I think it's partly, it goes slightly further back in that I don't think Britain became sort of modernized in the same way as in the 1920s and 30s compared to Scandinavia, where you had a huge sort of modern movement and housing and everything and social policies and all that before the war sort of kicked in, which I think after the war, Britain kind of closed its doors and did not become quite so, free and progressive as perhaps the rest of the mainland sort of European countries. And I think that struck me when I got here in some respect. But I think into the 90s, I think that's when it happened for Britain in a huge way. It compared to, and I think, I don't know, my feeling is that, and my theory is that did not, that did not reach out in quite the same way. The sort of positive feeling of life in London, in particular, that you had in the 90s after the sort of we got to terms with the AIDS scare and all that. I think that for some reason did not happen in the rest of Europe. But it is happening now. But it's kind of it's sort of planned out a little bit in that. I think Britain is, or London in particular, is moving much faster at the moment in terms of ironing out all the inequalities that still exist. So